everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day. And check out our co-sponsor, CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory prices and delivery of cards for Magic Online. And check out our altar sleeves. Support the show by using the code MAGICMICS at checkout for 5% off anything in that store. And finally, our newest sponsor, Cardamajigs, has their Kickstarter running right now for Cube-O-Majig Series 2. Their reusable booster packs for Magic Cube and more. Sign up right now, or back it rather right now at cubeks.com. I am Evan Irwin, and we get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, MTG Nerd Girl.
Hey guys.
Ruben Bressler.
What's up? How's it going?
It's a wonderful day in the neighborhood, let me tell you.
Absolutely.
We are here. We're recording a top 10. I'm excited. I played a lot of this format, and I'm sure Nerd Girl has as well, of course. So let's do this.
I played a little. Hey, listen.
Hey.
Okay.
Hey.
I've played a little as well. A little bit.
I'm just saying.
I know.
We also begin with our choice of the top comment from last week in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most eloquent, letting us know what card we did not choose as one of our top 10 AFR Commander cards.
Right.
Ruben?
We had a real active comment section, actually, on this one, more so than usual, but I decided that Dakota M had one of the best comments, who writes, so, he did get mentioned a few times, but the sheer power of Wolfgar of Icewind Dale cannot be understated. His doubling of attack triggers applies not only to Klauth, but also to some really nasty effects like Annihilator, team boosting effects like Pathbreaker Ibex and Cultivator of Blades, and even niche stuff like Nakatl War Pride. Pack in some extra combats and on-hit draws with Toski and Oran Frostfang, and you'll have an easy-to-pilot, aggressive deck that hits like a freight train and can smash even gridlocked boards.
Wolfgar of Icewind Dale is a rare from the set. It is a legendary human barbarian. It's a 4/4 for green, red, and 3 generic mana. So 5 mana 4/4 with melee. Whenever this creature attacks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each opponent you attacked this combat. If a creature you control attacking would cause a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. It's a panharmonicon for creatures.
For attacking
trigger creatures.
So the melee on himself, just by himself, triggers twice.
Triggers twice, yes.
And then, I mean, your Ulamog triggers, as we, said before.
Right. So by default, you're a 5 mana 6/6 when you're attacking.
Right. Battle Cry, Pack Tactics, I mean, they're all Battalion, all of them are going to trigger twice.
I mean, for me, it's the Annihilator trigger, getting multiple Annihilator triggers.
Yeah,
That's good, clean living right there. That's just fun. All right. Well, congratulations to Dakota. Please contact us on social media for your prize. Thanks again to CoolStuffInc.com for sponsoring this giveaway. And stay tuned for our top 10 list this week, and maybe you can win next week's free gift certificate. Because it is time to talk about the top 10 limited cards in AFR, Adventures of the Forgotten Realms. And we all have our own little different ways of defining what that is. So, Nerd Girl, how would you describe this format?
Oh boy. So this format is definitely interesting. It's got some mixed reviews as far as what I hear from my viewers as far as the die rolls and the different stuff. But there's a lot of different archetypes, and I'm noticing that at the drafting table, at least on Arena, the virtual table, I'm seeing each table being very different. Things go around super late in one pod, and then they don't go around super late in the next. So that alone is changing a lot of variants, and it tells me that people are evaluating the colors and the archetypes very differently.
Ruben, what's your take on this one?
I've definitely felt that the cards that are going, I'm wheeling cards in some cases that I was considering first picking. I had a draft today where I ended up with 3 You See a Pair of Goblins, which I value a lot higher personally. And some drafts I'll pick it third, and I've seen them get taken super early.
And so you can never find them, right?
Right, exactly. But they had a higher stealth roll that time. But it changes from draft to draft. Some drafts I'll find all the sack outlets I need, or all of the hoarding ogres that I need for my coin flip treasures, and then some drafts it's just I just don't see a Sepulchre Ghoul. Some drafts are just I'll get 5 of this common that's okay, and then some drafts will just be I just have not seen a Sylvan gain life when it attacks. So it is very varied when it comes to that. And that signals to me that the floor is super high. You know, the ceiling might not be super high, but at least the floor of the worst cards, like,
being somewhat playable,
terrible.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Which I like, especially for something that is as simple and as supposed to be as easy to grok as a core set, which this kind of is.
Which it feels like. I feel like this, it does feel very core setty to me. I feel like what I've learned over time is that I will trade more often, and that the more often I trade with my opponent, often the better it is for me, because I try to get threats off the board. Threats tend to steamroll if you don't take care of something early. Like, for example, my number 10, which we can get to right now. You know what? Screw it. We're going to do this. We're going to do it. We're going to rock it into number 10. This is my number 10. This is the type of card that when my opponent played his third copy, I wanted to just jump in front of a bus, y'all. Because God Almighty, you've seen 3 Hobgoblin captains come towards you. They all got first strike. Ain't nothing you can do. Nobody can block them. Everybody's got 3 toughness, which is another thing that's really annoying, but whatever. Hobgoblin Captain is a terrific limited card, and I will play every copy I can. It's a red and a generic mana for a 3/1 common Goblin Barbarian with a pack tactics, which means whenever it attacks, if you attack with creatures with total power 6 or greater, it gains first strike until end of turn, which means 2 copies of it, turns on itself, and that is very scary. And that's how I died one draft. And I was like, oh, that card's better than I thought it was, because this was way early in the format. And they dropped one, and I was like, you know, whatever. I'm not going to block it with my 2/2. And then they played another one, and I never blocked again. And then I died.
Yeah, no, that card is super overperformed. Honestly, red is the color that has the commons, I think, that have overperformed the most for me. And Hobgoblin is number 1 or number 2 on that list.
Yeah.
For sure.
It was the second one that I was like, oh, God.
I mean,
can't stop
so
them.
there are 2 common 3/1s for 2 mana in this set. This and when it gets equipped, it gets +0/+2.
Right.
And both have overperformed because, as you said, everything has 3 toughness. The whole set is 2 3s, 3 3s, and 4 3s.
Yep.
So it just feels way better. And oh, by the way, gaining first strike is not hard on this card.
No.
You have kick open the door to get haste on turn. If you play another Hobgoblin Captain and kick open the door, you're immediately attacking for 7. There's a ton of just random bears that can get pumped up super easy. You've got the Goblin Attack Lord that also has pack tactics. This card. And, oh, by the way, it still just stands in front of your opponent's attacking 3 mana creatures. So, yeah, this card is really, really good.
It tends to either trade up or just be such a good threat that they have a really hard time dealing with it. Any tricks whatsoever just blow out your opponent because of the first strike. It's fantastic. Ruben, what's your number 10?
So my list, I don't know if we've discussed exactly which cards we set, in limited, in draft. I don't want to just have, you mentioned you didn't want to have a list that's just all mythics, but I also don't have a list that has any rares. I picked only commons and uncommons.
Okay.
Because they're the ones I have the most experience with, and they're the ones that I've had, I can tell I have a bigger sample size. And I felt like that was what I wanted with my list. And also I wanted cards that I felt like were going to shine in limited and really not see play much anywhere else. And my number 10 is a really good poster child for this. I've found that venturing into the dungeon is about equal to scrying a card.
That's about right.
It's not worth a full card. But getting repeated value and getting to venture multiple times has been huge for me. And one of the best ways I've found to do that is with Delver's Torch. Delver's Torch is a colorless and a white. For an equipment, it's a common. The equipped creature gets +1/+1 and it equips for 3. And when the creature attacks, you venture into the dungeon.
Yeah, this card has been super fantastic for me in terms of putting on anything that flies, which has been nice. Anything that also ventures into the dungeon when you deal damage with it, for example, or anything that has some sort of trigger and whatnot. Of course, it's amazing on the 3/3 legendary guy. I played a lot of that in the AFR constructed event, which was kind of cool. And the real thing that sort of balances this card the most is that equip cost, because it's easy to get on turn 2, but then you have to give up your whole turn 3 to snap it onto something and smash in. So you're paying a little bit sort of there, but I think once you venture 3 times, I would argue you've drawn a card, like from the different abilities and whatever, give or take. And of course, sometimes you actually do draw a card. That Palantir or whatever.
Definitely. There's some payoffs for it as well. I actually, Ruben, I love that you outlined what your list is about, because I actually wanted to do that with my list too, because I wanted to like help people in their drafting, and like saying a bunch of rares and mythics doesn't actually help them because you're not going to see them. And most of the time people are rare drafting anyway, because they, just want to play rares. But so I love that, but I also wanted to like pick cards that people would be excited about. So
it's up to
I'm
you
really,
what your
really
list
excited
is
about your
about.
list.
Yeah. Yeah, I also think that the +1/+1, as we mentioned, everything has 3 toughness.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of 2/3s, and turning them into 3/4s, I mean, especially in white, you've got the Gloomstalker that's a 2/3. I feel like there's like 4 2/3s.
There's a bunch
that I see all the time in white and blue, really. And being able to just rumble past those guys is super nice.
Being able to play the Hawk this on turn 2 and then equip the Hawk on turn 3 is like generally my favorite, one of my favorite openers for the format. All right, let's move on here to Nerd Girls number 10. What you got?
It's higher on someone else's list.
Oh, well, I'll be dang. There you go.
Well, I know it's Evan's because it's a rare.
There you go. Well, all right. Well, we'll talk about that later. I'm sure it's awesome. Let's move on here to number 9, which is higher on someone else's list for me. We'll talk about it later. It's a fantastic card. Ruben, what's number 9?
So I've fallen in love with a 2-card combo, and they're both on my list. But I want to talk about Sepulchre Ghoul at number 9.
Okay.
Sepulchre Ghoul is a colorless and a black for a 2/1. It's a zombie. It's common. And you sacrifice another creature. Sepulchre Ghoul gets +2/+2 until the end of the turn. Activate only once each turn. It is so easy to just get a outclassed idiot. Just, one of the dungeons gives you a goblin token. There's a lot of death triggers. Shambling, I think it's Shambling Ghoul is the one that gives you a treasure.
Yep, that card's great.
Or Shambling Ghast is what it's called. And I think that, you need to get on the board early in this format, or else you just get run over. And you don't necessarily have to be aggressive. Like, you can play a Shambling Ghast, and that can be your early play. But this format can snowball, and this is another card that trades up really well, and makes combat math just impossible. And I think that this card's just vastly overperformed for me.
Yeah. It definitely does make combat really awkward. It makes your smaller, like, Shambling Ghasts trade up, because then if they want to block, they either take 2 or they have to, like, block it, and then they, you eat a Shambling Ghoul to kill whatever their creature is. So that's been really nice. I'm guessing your 2-card combo is like the steely bits, right? That's actually like a whole archetype. And I find that those steel cards go around really very late, which give this a ton of value. So I definitely think that's really cool. One of the things, a little note that you can do powerful things with these commons is I actually stole someone else's Asmodeus, drew 7 on the stack, and then sacked it to the ghoul. And just drew 9 cards.
Yeah, because Asmodeus is worded that if it's not in play,
right, you just
when the trigger resolves.
And I was in black and had a Shambling Geist on board, so I was just like, "Oh, you're just gonna play this 6/6 for me, thank you." And I had 6 mana, and so I was like, "Steal your 6/6, hit you with it, draw 7 on the stack, sacrifice it, thank you." So yeah, that's a really powerful card that enables some really neat tricks at common.
I had no idea how the Devil God worked when I first played it, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool." You know what? He steals my draw step, but that's okay because I can just play 3 mana. And hey, where are the cards going? Oh God!
Yeah,
the cards are going under that card. I can't. I'm at less life than the number of cards under him. I can't draw a card anymore. Oh my
Amazing.
God! It was hilarious. This card in particular, Sepulchre Ghoul, is remarkable, and just that it messes up combat. You have to use your removal spell on this card. You just have to. It's going to eat whatever you targeted otherwise. So like, you got to get the thing off the board. It's incredible with Price of Loyalty or whatever. And
and anytime there's a free sack outlet, call Sam Black, because this could say literally no text after sacrifice a creature :
activate only once each turn, though.
It's fine.
It turns off some of the Sam Blackness.
Yeah, sure.
It also eats a lot of premium removal because anytime it's on the board, your opponents are scared of the steal spell, so they will dump their premium removal to avoid you getting to keep that sack outlet and keep your mana more locked up, so that way you know if you don't have another sack outlet, it kind of kills those steal spells for you. And so then you're playing your 5 or 6 drop and they don't have a removal for it anymore. So if they're using that on your 2 drop, you're a happy camper.
Oh yeah, cards super duper sweet. Nerd Girl, what's number 9?
So just a little idea of how I decided to do my list for you guys is I kind of did the middle of the 2 grounds. I didn't want just like the mythic bombs that just destroy everybody because that's no fun. But I also picked cards that I thought people would get excited about. So my list are cards that I have played or played against with the highest win rate. If you see this card played against you, as I go up my rating list, you're more likely to lose the game. So my number 9 is Varus Silvermoon Ranger.
Ooh.
So this is a green rare. It is, I was accidentally on my wrong card here. Just want to get the text right for you guys. So it is colorless green. It is a legendary human elf ranger. It's a 3/3 for 3 mana. It is ward and reach, ward 1. So it's already got 2 keywords for a well-statted creature for the mana cost.
Mm-hmm.
And then whenever you cast a creature or planeswalker spell, venture into the dungeon. This ability only triggers once per turn. So every creature gets a bonus. And you guys were saying that 2 to 3 ventures is like a bonus card draw.
Mm-hmm.
So just playing your creatures is giving you extra value while this is on board. And whenever you complete a dungeon, which isn't too hard, you get in a bonus 2/2 creature, which in Limited actually makes quite a bit of a difference. I will say that the first ability is a little bit more relevant. Triggering the 2/2 wolves is less common, but I have triggered it up to 3 times. It's kind of a snowbally card. If you play this on 3 or if it's played against you on 3 and you don't have a good answer, which with Ward 1, it's tough to answer, it will just produce so much value that the window in which you can come back from this game, it shrinks very quickly.
Oh yeah, it gets really ridiculous. This card, this is a kill on sight card because nothing ever good happens when you leave Varus on the battlefield. They untap, they'll play 2 creatures or whatever and get a free venture in there. You only have to do 4 venturings for Fandelver to be completed. So then all of a sudden, so you might have done it maybe once before you played this card. So 3 more times, which means you play a creature, you get a trigger here and there. Boop, before you know it, you're getting free wolves. This card gets bananas fast.
Yeah, this card's very scary. And there's a lot of premium removal at exactly 3.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Spoil.
magic missile, spoil. There is Dragon's Fire, magic missile, there's a couple others.
Right.
Sleep containment.
Yeah. And so the ward 1, it doesn't look like a lot, but every one, if you've played against a Thalia, if you've played against a Grand Arbiter, 1 mana means a lot.
It can.
And the amount of value that's stapled on this card is astronomical.
Yeah, they kind of just kept putting words on it. I feel like sure. How about when you finish a dungeon, you get a wolf? Yeah, whatever. Let's go to lunch.
We didn't get enough, so we need to put more stuff on this card. Yeah.
All right.
And the reach is relevant too, which is really nice.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that is one of my favorites. Every set has a I didn't realize this card has reach award, and this is definitely one of those.
Yeah, people run smack into it and you go, oh god, that thing can block flyers.
Are there any other creatures that are inexplicably have reach in this set? Intrepid Outlander, also another one for that green venture deck.
Yeah, it can help.
Inexplicably has reach.
Yeah, you're why does I don't know. But move here to number 8. My number 8 is a card that we spoke of a few minutes ago. It's one of my favorite just cards to play with the set. I've had nothing but I just have so much fun with the idea that you can kind of create these scenarios and all right, I want to make some tokens. You kind of play a little bit weird, but then you finally have that one turn and you play Battle Cry Goblin and you pump, go, and they're just dead out of nowhere. And you have those really cool tricks where you attack, you let the trigger trigger resolve, then you use the pump ability, so you can pump all of the goblins at once. Like, there's so much play in this wonderful 2-drop. It's a red and generic mana for a 2/2 uncommon goblin with a red and generic mana goblins you control get +1/+0 and gain haste until end of turn. That's amazing. And it has pack tactics. Whenever battle cry goblin attacks, if you attack with creatures with total power 6 or greater this combat, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token that's tapped and attacking. It's an army in a can. It pumps the army in the can that it makes. There's a ton of other just random goblins in the set, which are fantastic. And yeah, you see a pair of goblins is like amazing once you have one of these. Like, it's just incredible. So
yeah, cards great. The red-green pack tactics deck is quite good.
It's very good.
The Knoll Hunters, the Hobgoblin Captains, as we've talked about before. And then you try to find a couple of the big uncommons, and this is definitely one of them.
The Moon Druid.
Yeah.
Because then you're just on turn 4, you're swinging with pack tactics, because on your turn it turns into a 4/2,
right,
which is the easiest way to trigger it, and that is a snowbally deck.
Absolutely. And I've also found that having mana sinks is very important in this format. You can get gummed up boards. I mean, if your green-white opponent has a Varus and is just making a bunch of wolves and a bunch of measly idiots, or your blue-white opponent is playing some cloistered gargoyles and secret doors, and the whole board is just gummed up, well, having a way to spend all of your mana and beat through those walls is a huge deal. And this thing, I mean, is fine by itself, just late game. Oh, I top deck this? Well, attack you for like 5, right?
Yeah,
good.
Just out of nowhere.
Good living.
Yeah. Card is fan-freaking-tastic, and it just surprised me over time by, like, the more I played with it, the more I realized just how crazy good it was in this format. You get a lot of treasures that you don't always cash in or don't have ways to cash in, and this is a great way to use them, which is fantastic. Ruben, what's number 8?
Speaking of treasures to cash in, it's the other half of the combo. Price of Loyalty is my number 8. 2 colorless and a red sorcery. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature. It gains haste until end of turn. If mana from a treasure was spent to cast this spell, that creature gets +2/+0 until the end of the turn. First, I want to talk about if treasure was spent, which is a new ability thing that they've added. And I love it. I think it's super flavorful. It's the best place to put it in the D&D set because D&D is all about looting and treasure and all that good stuff. And in this card in particular, flavorfully, it makes sense. You're paying off the guard. So if you give them a little extra treasure, you get a little bit of extra work out of them. This with Sepulchre Ghoul is it's insane. There's a bunch of other sack outlets that cost mana, but Sepulchre Ghoul doesn't ask anything else out of you. So you can play the Ghoul. Turn 2, they play their great 3-drop on turn 3, and then you're like, I'll take it, attack you with it, and sacrifice it, go.
Or you take their Asmodeus.
That's the thing about threaten effects in Limited is they have an extremely low floor, right? It can be real bad. But their ceiling, especially since the red-black deck has so many ways to sacrifice things, is super high.
This is the greatest threat of all time. And that's kind of obvious in many ways, but like I can't tell you how many times this format's so swingy. It's super duper swingy. And it's like, if you get behind, you can just get left out. So there was one game where I was sitting there and it was like turn 4 or something. And I was like, if I price of loyalty right now, I'll knock them down to 5 life. And that's not nothing, but they also had a little bit of board presence. They had one creature they played out, and I was like, I'm gonna knock them to 5. And because I knocked them to 5, they got in a position where they kind of had to keep blocking every single turn, and I kind of overran them because of that. And it was thanks to that +2/+0, which I know is like a small thing, feels like, but they play a giant monster and you pump it up even bigger than that. I've killed people out of nowhere with this plenty of times. This card's fantastic.
Because it's not just +2/+0 either, because you're also adding their creature on the board. So essentially, if they have a 4/4, you're adding 6 power to the board and removing a blocker, which is a massive board swing for Limited. That's it's definitely a 2-for-1.
Yeah. The tempo is just so huge. And I mean, I had to give it back to them, but at that point, I got them so low, they're on the ropes. And it's hard to get off the ropes in this format.
I'm usually not very high on threatens in limited, but this format, now that I've played the deck enough, and I know first of all, how late this thing goes, and how many combos. I mean, there's the sacrifice a creature to draw 2 cards and make a treasure. There's the 1/4 that sacrifices creatures to draw cards. Then there's Sepulchre Ghoul. I mean, there's so much to be able to combo with this, and this is really the only one of stealing stuff from your opponent. There's a couple ways to do it, but this is the only dependable one.
Right. This is the first 7-win deck I had in draft. I played 3 of these main deck, and it was an absolute house. And I just destroyed people, whether, again, it was the swings, or it was the sacking, or it was the swing in life that was too great. And just like, they a lot of times your opponents were just like, they'll rely on that one big blocker. They're like, I got that 4/5 that untaps when you gain life. You're never going to get through this thing. And I'm like, okay, sure, right. Here, have it back tapped. Like, it's wonderful. All right. Nerd Girl, what's number 8?
All right, moving up my win rate list, we have a very similar card to my number 9, actually. It's the Nadar Selfless Paladin. It is another 3/3 for 3 mana, 2 colorless and a white, so a bit easier to cast. Doesn't have the double color pip. It is a Dragon Knight, which I do forget that it is a dragon, so it's relevant with a couple of other spells in the format, like Dragon's Fire. You can use it for that, although it's a 3/3, so that doesn't really help.
Yeah, you could put +1/+1 counters on this.
Put counters on it.
Yeah.
I don't know about y'all, but like, I miss the Dragon's Fire thing all the time. Like, I have a dragon in my hand and I forget. I have a dragon on the board and I forget. And I start to play it and it's like, select a dragon or whatever. And I'm like, wait a minute, I can select a dragon. And then I would have played it totally differently if I'd have thought about that.
Yep, I do forget that one all the time too. So it has Vigilance, and whenever Selfless Paladin enters the battlefield or attacks, you venture into the dungeon. And if you've completed a dungeon, which, is a permanent thing, then all of your other creatures get +1/+1.
Yeah, this card's a house.
Which is actually kind of nuts. And I find, too, that, like, your opponents will see it before blocking, but oftentimes going out of their turn, they're like, okay, I'm going to block here and here and here, and this is fine. But then you swing, and all of a sudden, all your creatures get a big boost, and they're like, oh, I was not expecting, everything to be +1/+1, and then blocking is just way more awkward, because they'll forget about that last piece of text, and it's really important.
Oh yeah, this is like, it's like a mini Sun Titan, because whenever it enters the battlefield and attack triggers, they're just my favorite because they get sort of really stacky very quickly. And again, you play him and you attack. That's almost a full card's worth of value just right there. And then once he glorious anthem, all your creatures. I mean, you can just roll over people. This card is scary. I don't like playing this card.
He does need to attack to do, to keep doing what he does, unlike the Varus Silver Moon Ranger, which just requires you to play a creature. But he is venturing, so you can put a +1/+1 counter on him, and 4/4s are pretty good. So with one combat trick or one removal spell, you're very likely to be able to get that +1/+1 counter on it, and then just keep the train rolling.
Yeah. A couple easy ways to get this thing in combat without getting hurt too bad. The most common one I've seen is Thieves' Tools.
I was about to say Thieves' Tools works really well with this.
Which is really good with this card. Also, another thing I like about this card is that it is the cheapest dragon in the set, tied with Dragon Turtle, which is relevant for my Tiamat Brawl deck. Sometimes you just need a cheap dragon.
It's hard to find a cheap dragon sometimes, man.
It's tough to find a cheap dragon.
It just is what it is. Well, moving here to number 7. My 7 is higher on somebody else's list, which is great because I love that card. Ruben, what's your number 7?
My number 7 is just an absolutely wild common. This was like the most impressive common when I first started drafting. I've sort of fallen away from green as my base color, but there are some games where I'll just play a Sylvan Shepherd on turn 3 and then turn 4 and just be like, beat it. Like, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna I have 2 3s with Vigilance for days and I'm gaining life. Nice, deck full of goblins. Stupid. Sylvan Shepherd is 2 colorless and a green for a human druid. It is a 2/3 with Vigilance, and when it attacks, you roll a d20. 45% of the time, on a 1 through a 9, you gain 1 life. Then 50% of the time, you gain 2 life, 10 through 19. And then if you roll a natural 20, you gain 5 life.
Oof.
Even if you gain 1 life, It's just a
So
Vigilance 2/3 that's like little bits of value. I love this card.
Oh yeah, this triggers off the unicorn that gets the counters. It untaps the 4/5.
Dancer.
The Moon Dancer gets a counter and you scry, which is absurd. Yeah, this to me is like, if you're playing the green-white gain life deck, you have to have this. Any green-white deck that I've had that did not have this card just lost terribly, and vice versa. Like, it was fantastic every time I had a Sylvan Shepherd, because this card's very important for that trigger every turn.
Yeah, so these the gain +1/+1 whenever you gain life archetypes are usually, I think, not as strong as they are in this format, just because we have so many great enablers. We have this. We have the Druid class, which every time a land enters the battlefield, you gain a life, and your spec card, the Innkeeper.
Yeah.
Those are just some amazing triggers, and I honestly think that this is one of the best ones.
Yeah. I also really like Potion of Healing in that deck.
Yeah, it's nice.
Just because it cycles, it triggers. It's an artifact trigger for the blue-white like artifact matter sub-theme. There's a bunch of great ways to do it. But even without any of those payoffs, without a unicorn, without a cleric class or whatever, this thing just owns turn 3. Like, it's very difficult to do better than this early and middle of the game.
Right. And it's got Vigilance.
It's a good counter to the more aggressive decks, because they're attacking with their hobgoblins. You can't block them because they're first striking, so you take the 6, but then they can't attack you with their 2/2s, and then you can still swing back. They can't block. You gain the life to kind of mitigate some of that hobgoblin aggression. So this is a great counter for, even if you're not in the life gain deck, to help stop the aggressive decks and let you get to your owl bears and your big payoffs.
There was I was playing against somebody with this card, and they had played the blue enchantment that taps it and doesn't let it untap. Something
Charmed
sleep, right? And they attacked in, and I used Bull Strength to untap it and block, and then I totally forgot it had Vigilance, and I was like, oh my god, it's got Vigilance! It was just such a blowout, I could not imagine.
Yep.
Oh, it was wonderful. I loved it. All right, Nerd Girl, what's number 7?
So my number 7 actually probably should be a little bit higher on my list. But so it's Skeletal Swarming, which I think is a card that we've talked about in the past. It is 3 colorless, black and a green, so 5 mana. It's an enchantment. And each skeleton you control has trample, attacks each combat if able, and gets +X/+O, where X is the number of other skeletons you control. At the beginning of your end step, create a tapped 1/1 skeleton. If a creature died this turn, create 2. So it doesn't say a creature you control, so you could also just like remove something, or you attack your owl bear and they chump it. You play this post-combat, you're getting 2 skeletons. So the reason this card is not quite as high on my list as it probably should be is because if you're not at least at board even, it's not going to win you the game quite so snowbally. It's pretty easy if you can, hold back a 1/4 to block here.
Right.
And then if you're already ahead in the air or something, then you can overcome this card. So it has a great win rate if you are ahead or at even, then your opponents are never coming back. This is basically unbeatable.
I've beaten this card one time.
Yeah,
exactly
it's super hard. Yeah.
It just snowboard, like this is one of those, like, I'm looking at Innistrad. If there are any good skeletons, this card could absolutely be a force in standard, because it doesn't take much for this to run away with the game. You can stack them. If you want to play 2 of them, that's okay. But in limited, again, just the one. Like, I agree. If you're on the back foot just a little bit, it puts creatures into play tapped, and it kind of frustrates you, I think, in many ways. But man, once it gets going and you're killing creatures and it starts making 3/1s and start making 4/1s, it's very scary.
This card's very similar to Assemble the Legion,
Yeah.
which equally people were like, 5 mana, doesn't do anything the turn it comes into play. Guess what? This snowballs out of control and you just never lose ever. I think that I agree. Possible in standard, if you have like a very control deck kind of deal, this could just be your finisher.
Sure.
And in limited, it's a humongous bomb, because
God.
even if you're like 51% to win, you are just so far ahead once this hits the board.
Yeah. Just don't be like actively losing when you play it, and you'll be fine. Like, card is fantastic.
The actively losing clause is why it didn't make it into the top 5 for sure.
Sure. There you go.
Because some of the other bombs, like, you could be actively losing and then you just win the game for like basically no reason.
Right. All right. So we'll move on here to our number 6. Boopity boop. All right. This is my number 6. I love this one so much. I saw this card a long time, I see things come through the wire. I hear a lot of birdies chirp. I see things now and then. But as soon as I read this card, I knew it was going to be really good, really sweet, playable, fun, whatever. And the second was like, man, it's just so cool. And I knew it would be like super flavorful for someone to explain to me what a bugbear is and where their den is. Because Den of the Bugbear is my number 6. This card is dope. It is a rare land from the set that says if you control 2 or more other lands, it enters the battlefield tapped. You tap to add a red mana, and for a red and 3 generic mana, so 4 total, until end of turn it becomes a 3/2 red goblin creature with whenever this creature attacks, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token that's tapped and attacking. So people have been talking about playing maybe because this is a one of in Modern. I've seen this thing all over in Standard. I played with it myself. I crafted it. I bought the stupid thing that makes it look like an adventure book because I love it, and that's where we are. That's great.
I just want to say really quickly, I bet you I know somebody who can tell you all about bugbears and where they come from and what their dens look like.
Oh, who would that be? Oh, is that me, the resident D&D nerd?
Oh, that guy.
Yeah, bugbears are an important part of goblin society. They are the big burly guys. Most goblins are sneaky. Most goblins are stealthy and dexterity based. The bugbears are human-sized, and they carry big clubs, and they can actually, open doors and reach high shelves and stuff. And the den of the bugbear would be a dangerous place to walk into for anyone who was not covered in fur.
Nice. Yeah, and this card, of course, Unlimited, this card is amazing. It's every deck that has red in it, you're going to play in it. It's great when you're it's good, obviously, on turn 1 because it comes into play untapped, which is nice. It's a little weird. I wish they gave it the same clause they gave the dual lands from, Aether Revolt and Kaladesh or whatever. The ones that, if you have 2 other lands or whatever, it still enters untapped. But if you have 3, it don't.
These are a little worse because not first 3 turns, but
as creature lands are amazing.
Especially for the red one, I think that it's fine to be 2 lands.
Yeah. But I'm sure they don't want to be different between the 2 or 3 or whatever. But either way, I love this cycle. I like this card a lot. It was fun. I enjoyed it. So we want to hear to Ruben's number 6. What you got?
My number 6 is the last common because my 10 through 6 were commons. The rest are going to be uncommons. I don't know if this is my favorite common. I don't know if this is the best common. All I know is it feels real good to be playing a deck without blue in it and be able to draw cards with white cards. My number 6 is Priest of Ancient Lore. Priest of Ancient Lore is 2 colorless and a white for a 2/1 dwarf cleric. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life and you draw a card. Listen, mono white, we've had it hard, okay? I'm excited about this card. I definitely had a teleportation circle deck also. Where I was able to blink this and get all the value every turn.
Oh my god.
And the other cool thing about this card is that it has the keyword crappy. And what's really good about the keyword crappy is your opponents don't want to trade their premium 3-drops with your crappy 3-drop, so they just won't attack you with the Soul Knife Spy. Or, whatever other mediocre common they have, the Moon Blessed Cleric or whatever. Right. Because they don't want to trade with your crappy creature that already got its value. Yep. So it actually has this weird overshield over it where it's like, well, I could attack here and trade, but I just feel bad about it.
Yep, because they need to hit you in order to get the damage or to get the cards, right? Or the Moon Druid or whatever, which has its own benefit of being a good blocker on the way back. So then you just you do have this extra little shield. And actually, I just recently made a top 5, one of each color overperforming commons. So a list of things for people to look out for when playing limited that will overperform for them, and they should probably be taking higher than they are. And this was the card I picked for white. This card is amazing. I didn't think that the life gain triggers would be as relevant as they are, and it blocks so well and stonewalls against the more aggressive decks. If, on the play, to be fair, but, if you play this against a hobgoblin and you just get 1 turn where you can block them and mitigate and get some extra card draw, it's just so good.
Yeah, this was my number 9 because I love this card. This is what we've been waiting is for Wizards to stop being so weird about giving white card draw. It felt like there was a point where they're like, you know what? Green can draw cards. We're fine with green drawing cards. And then white's over here going, you guys get to draw cards? What? Right. We don't get to draw any cards over here. And they have these weird Mangara stuff, workarounds, and all these weird conditions and stuff. It's no, dude, play the card, gain a life, draw a card. It's okay. And
White's
it
been
plays great.
so bad.
Yeah. Total trash.
What
And
was
have
the
to be
last in the
stingy.
last set? The Horizon. Everybody draws 3 cards or whatever. Like
Right. Yeah. Secret Rendezvous or
Right.
something like that.
Something like that. And it's like, really?
now, Flump. But I still don't like Flump. I'm getting super mixed reviews on it. But that's like another like white card draw thing.
Right.
But it feels super bad. Everybody's like, oh, it's really good against aggressive decks. I'm like, yeah, but you don't want to give aggressive decks more cards because that's how you lose against aggressive decks.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I've played with that card too. Well, first of all, apparently, according to Untapped, blue-white is the worst archetype, and it certainly felt that way. So I was trying to play like a blue-white flyer deck, and that O4 just let them draw all their removal, and then I just died.
Sure.
So, yeah, this card, though, I mean, again, 3 mana, 2/1, gain life, draw a card. Let's do more of this. Give us more of this, please. It was awesome.
Yeah, card's very good.
All right. Nerd Girl, what's number 6?
So my number 6 is another like mid-range card. Again, that if you're playing it, your win rate goes through the roof. And as we go up my list, it's going to get easier and easier to win these games. And then also seeing it on the opposing board on turn 5 is basically a death sentence at this point. So that is the Froghemoth.
Ooh,
Froghemoth.
Froghemoth. Oh. I didn't put my my syllables in the right place there.
Hey,
Don't mind me.
I like the Froghemoth. I actually prefer that.
God damn it. Froghemoth. That does make sense.
Yes.
Whatever.
It's fine.
You're good.
5 mana, 3 colorless, green for a 4/4 with trample and haste. This is already. I'm playing this. Like if it has no more text, it could have a blank box. This is already fine. Whenever the Froghemoth deals combat damage to a player, exile up to that many cards from their graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter for each creature exiled this way. And then you gain 1 life for each non-creature spell exiled this way. So it's twofold. You just remove their entire graveyard, which is less relevant in this format than it has been in any of the past. So we really just care about the triggers that we're getting. But it is going to give you a life boost, 2-3 points. It also is going to immediately become a +2/+2 or +3/+3 easy by turn 5, because this is kind of a quicker format than we anticipated. The nice thing about it too, which cards like this typically get a little bit of a dock on like my rating scale, because you play it and if it gets removed, it leaves no lasting effect on the board. But because it has haste, you can kind of play it in a way that like your opponent doesn't have the removal open or whatever. So you maybe don't want to play this if your opponent's on 4 and just didn't play anything. Right. You could choose to play something else and then get in with this when the window of opportunity arises. It becomes a 6/6, and now it's way harder to deal with. It no longer dies to a bunch of removal spells like Fireball and things. Yeah. So in that way, it does kind of leave a lasting effect on the board.
Yeah, this thing is constructed playable at this point.
Sure.
And like just 5 mana again. 5 mana, 4/4 trample haste. We're already in. I'm signed up. Show me where to go. And this thing, the shields only need to be like just partially down. They don't even need to be 100% down. Like, all right, if you got, power word kill or word death kill or whatever it's called. Power word kill. Yeah, then you got me. But until then, I'm hitting you with the frog horror. Like it's happening. Just,
yeah. This thing it's a land dragon. I mean, it's insane. This card is spectacular and limited because most of the cards in graveyards are going to be creatures. Yep. And if it because it tramples, it's going to get those +1/+1 counters even if it gets chump blocked. So there's no winning when the Froghemoth comes down.
What's a Froghemoth? You mean Froghemoth?
Froghemoth.
Are we talking about Froghemoth?
It is part frog, part moth. And does not have flying because it's too heavy.
That's right.
Yeah,
he's working on that. All right,
right.
He's cutting back.
These are. It's basically like how they describe the Gitrog monster. Like these are horror things that eat towns. Like they're elephant-sized frogs that just eat everything.
Goodness.
And you get that feeling here from this oversized, hasty scavenging ooze. I mean, this card is crazy. I love it.
Yeah, it's scavenging ooze ++, and I will take it. Speaking of good green cards, always we move on here to my number 5. We have, I mean, there was a theme. It was, which one do I put above the other? I've been playing more of this card than I played with Den of the Bugbear, so I let Lair of the Hydra be my number 5. This card is fantastic. It's a rare land that says if you control 2 or more other lands, it enters the battlefield tapped. It taps at a green or for a green and X until end of turn. It becomes an XX green Hydra creature that's still a land. X can't be 0. Turning this into a 1/1 to let your beast attack, your 5/5 beast attack is still a thing.
Your Lovestruck Beast, yeah.
Right, Lovestruck Beast was great and constructed, but in limited, I mean, this thing is, of course, an auto-include in every green deck. It's amazing. It's good early. It's good late. Like, it's a fantastic top deck. Next turn, I'm going to come and get you. Like, good luck stopping my land. And yeah, I've never had a bad time playing this card ever. That's pretty much all
I agree. I think it's one of the better of the land cycles. I think this and Bugbear Den are like tied for second for me. And I love the flexibility in that, you don't have a turn 4 play, hit them for a little bit. Or, they're always having to like keep that land in mind. And if they don't, it's very often just dead for them. So, the land position is a place where players often just after a while be like, oh, he plays this thing. And then 20 minutes down the line forgets that it's there. I've definitely done it and paid with my life. So these are always really good additions to any deck.
Yeah. Anytime you can turn your land into something usable, it's huge. And that's why creature lands are so highly valued, or value land, or generic storage lands are so highly valued, because they don't just do nothing when you have a late game, you're hellbent, you're getting flooded, nothing to do. This also avoids a bunch of the sorcery speed removal. It avoids, sure. I mean, if your opponent has Faraday's Fireball in their hand, you can just wait to make this a 6/6. You're avoiding Grim Bounty, you're avoiding Precipitous Drop. You're this thing, and oh, by the way, you can make it a 10/10 later in the game.
Oh yeah, and the only thing I would say, and I've seen this happen before, is players forget that it's green and X. It's not just X mana, right. It's green and X. So I'll attack into somebody expecting them to animate the land, and then they animate it for one higher number, and it taps itself to activate it itself, and I'm like, oh man,
oof.
You gotta remember that one. It's not cool. Let's move here to number 5 for Ruben. What you got?
We're on to my uncommons now, and
go.
I mean, my favorite archetype, as I've already talked about, is that red-black kind of mid-rangey treasure sacrifice thing.
That's the best archetype. Wins the most.
It's the best archetype. It's my favorite archetype, and I think my favorite card to get in that archetype is Skullport Merchant. 2 colorless and a black gets you a 1/4 dwarf citizen. When it enters the battlefield, you create a treasure token, and then it has the ability to pay a colorless and a black and sacrifice another creature or a treasure, draw a card. So it's a 1/4, stands in front of anything else your opponent's playing on turn 3. Also, tangles pretty good with the bugbears. It makes a treasure, so it can quote-unquote ramp you or fix your mana. And later in the game, all those unused treasures turn into extra cards. They turn into more gas. Not to mention the fact that if you steal an opponent's creature, this is a sack outlet. This card just does all of the things I want to be doing.
I've always, the red-black archetype for me is just, it's the best archetype. It's been proven off thousands of games. But the other half is it's so resilient because Hoarding Ogre is making treasures over and over again. This thing is drawing cards and sacking their guys you take the price of loyalty. This to me, this is, if there is a bellwether uncommon, if I see this beyond pick 1 in any pack, I feel like this archetype is open because you do not pass this card. This is one of the best uncommons in the set, in limited. There's a whole world of how well my red-black deck does when I have one of these versus when I don't have one of these. And the huge toughness is fantastic, and pumping itself, or not pumping itself, but giving things you can do late game and all this treasure that are just hanging around. Skullport Merchant is good, clean living, let me tell you. And it was my number 7, so that's why. Nerd Girl, what's number 5?
So my number 5 is another one of those big high win rate cards. Like I said, as we go up and up, it's going to be harder and harder to win a game or to lose a game if you have these cards. So we've got a big flying evasive creature. We've got the Westgate Regent. It is a 5 mana, 3 colorless black for a 4/4 flyer. It has Ward 1, discard a card. It also has, whenever Westgate Regent deals combat damage to a player, put that many +1/+1 counters on it. It has flying, so if it hits, it's difficult to block. There's also not a ton of there's no uncommon or common flyers that block this well. So they have to have like a dragon on the board to battle. It just immediately becomes an 8/8, basically.
Oh, yeah.
Part of the reason I rated this higher than the last one is because of that ward discard a spell. So you're guaranteed, like, if they don't answer it, you win the game. If they answer it, it's still a 2-for-1 just at its base. They can't do anything about it, which is pretty amazing. So even if they have the Grim Bounty before you actually get to swing in and activate this, they're still going to have to pitch something. So if you play this on 5, you're in a really, really good spot, regardless of whether or not it sticks around.
Yeah, there's certain cards and certain sort of threats, There's certain threats that you play that say, if they have a removal spell, they're gonna play it. It's not a question. It's not I wonder if they have it after you untap with this thing. No. They didn't have it because you untapped with it. Like, this card is so ridiculously overpowered compared to, like, the olden days. You had a single vampire that doubled its power and you had to discard a card just to target it. Like, it's absolutely bananas. What we're over here going like, it's okay. It just doubles its power forever every time it hits the player. It's fine. Who cares?
This thing is closer to a reality smasher than it is to a singular vampire.
Yeah.
The ward discard a card
is huge.
Is at least a 2-for-1.
Yeah.
And then the other option is you just win the game immediately because you attack for 4, you attack for 8, you attack for 16. There are very few cards in this set that I have yet to see in a booster pack. I have yet to see a Westgate region.
Oh, I've seen one and I played one, and I assure you,
it's very good.
It's never a question of I wonder if they had removal and just didn't play it. No, they didn't.
Well, except for you saw it on the watch. That's a scary one you want to avoid with this card. But
yeah, very very scary. Let's move on here to our number 4. My number 4 here is a blowout. I put blowouts on my list. I'm not going to lie. I put some mythics on here. I put some rares on here. I put this card. This is also one of those cards that I didn't exactly understand when I first read it. And it's fine because I thought it was better than it was, but it doesn't need to be any better than it is because there's a point in time when I've had this card and I had it and I draw it and this is the type of card that you're just going to wait. You're just going to get the nice setup. They're going to make them nice and comfortable. You go over here, you got your creatures. You got it all. You got your stuff. You got some flyers going on, whatever. And then I go Meteor Swarm for 4 and just wreck your board. And it's amazing and beautiful. And I loved it. And Meteor Swarm got passed to me late. And I was like, what are you people doing with your lives? 3 red and X for a rare sorcery that deals 8 damage divided as you choose among X target creatures and or planeswalkers. I mean, it turns boards around. It completely destroys whatever they've done. I mean, I don't think I've lost a game where I played this card.
This was actually my number 10.
Oh, nice.
The reason I put it a little bit lower, I agree. That if you play this card, you're likely winning. On 6, it is 6 mana. It is magical. You will win games you were not supposed to win. You will close out games right now that were stalled.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason I didn't put it higher is because it is kind of a landslide or swing your format. And I feel like a lot of games are being decided before turn 6. That even if you kill them, they still get you with their 1/1 token or something because it's so far behind or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, this card is absolutely amazing.
Yeah. This card is sweet.
Yeah, I mean, even 5 mana split between 2 targets, kill 2 owlbears. I mean, that's perfectly reasonable.
Yeah, that's perfectly
This
great.
card is also a little tough because of the triple red, although if you have a lot of treasure, you can mitigate that cost. It's just a crazy card, and it feels epic, which you needed for a card named Meteor Swarm. Meteor Swarm's a level 9 D&D spell. It has, huge provenance and gravitas in D&D. It needed to do something wild. And this I don't think we've ever seen anything quite like this wording on a red burn spell before.
Not quite like this, I don't think.
Yeah.
All right. Ruben, what's number 4?
Well, I kind of agree that Meteor Swarm is great. So much so that my number 4 is basically Meteor Swarm's little brother. When we were looking at cards and names and iconic things that were going to get put into the D&D set, the first things we thought of were like, oh, they got to make a fireball. Oh, they got to make a counterspell. Oh, they got to make a magic missile. and they gave us Magic Missile. Colorless red sorcery, this spell can't be countered. Magic Missile deals 3 damage divided as you choose among 1, 2, or 3 targets. I've played against enough of those 3/1s, enough of those Prosperous Innkeepers and those Lightfoot Halflings, and, you know, those stupid idiot, like, really aggressive, like, 1/1 flyer decks, that being able to, you know, I'll pick off a 2/2 and I'll pick off a 3/1, and that's good enough value, or I'll just wipe your entire board. And yeah, this card's spectacular.
It is overperformed. I'm pretty confident putting in my deck that it's going to be 2-for-1. Just the format is more aggressive than we were expecting. It's going to get a priest and a 2/2 or whatever. Their goblin token and then their goblin battlecry goblin. Like, it is really spicy. At sorcery speed makes me a little sad, but also, unlike a lot of the removal, it does go face. So it's also a nice, like, little finisher too. If, you know, having that flexibility is pretty nice.
Oh yeah, I mean, this played after combat is usually the most brutal because, you know, they're doing all of their good blocks and all of their positive trades, and then you're like, okay, and wreck 3 of your guys, and you're like, and you die. I've played the Forsworn Paladin, I think his name, the black rare 1/1 guy, and then I played 2 of the Ghasts, and then they magic missiled them all away. I was like, oh my god, I felt bad. I think I might have lost that game. I can't remember, but I do remember going, you know, 1/1, 1/1, 1/1, and magic missiled my entire board. Damn it. All right, Nerd Girl, what's number 4?
So my number 4 spot is for the card that is better than a 2-for-1, and that is a 3-for-1, which is the Mind Flayer. It's a 3/3 for 5 mana, 3 colorless blue. When it enters the battlefield, you gain control of target creature as long as Mind Flayer is on the battlefield. So it's not quite as good as the, like, maybe artifact or enchantment mind control cards, because it's easier to remove and get your creature back because, you know, main deck removals everywhere. But you are getting a body for it. So the times that they don't have that removal spell, you are just a huge beater. You're getting a 3/3 creature, plus you're getting their best creature, plus they don't have their best creature. So this played on 5 is just ending games absurdly fast. And you know, in that mid to late game when they've used their removal spell on your, like, solid 4-drop or your whatever flyer, like the Djinn is a pretty good blue target for 4 mana that people are removing very quickly. And this just opens the door for you to just wreck them with their own stuff, and getting 2 bodies and a removal spell tied to 1 card is nuts.
Like, Wizards just they won't give you that control magic back. They just won't. They won't give you it back. They'll let you think about it. They'll let you think about maybe some bribery effects or something nowadays in Modern or whatever. Even the 5 mana control magic you don't really see anymore. They haven't given us that since what, M13 or something ridiculous.
Right.
But, you know, 5 mana, it's a 3/3. 3's a very magical number in terms of toughness and dealing with creatures. And this is also one of those where you run them out of their removal. Usually, in games of limited, I feel like a lot of times there's the trade, there's the good block, the bad block, and then, like, okay, they played their Grim Bounty or whatever, and you're like, okay, there's no better removal spell than that. Time to Mind Flayer. That's usually what I'll wait for.
Yeah.
Unless they mulligan to 5 or something.
Well, this is like the juiciest target at 3 toughness, and so it's very easy to pick up late copies of You See a Guard Approach. And if I'll get an early Mind Flayer, I'll keep an eye out for that or Wild Shape to be able to give it hexproof to make sure that I'm getting my value, and I'm not only stealing their creature, I'm also blanking their remaining removal spell a lot of the time. This thing is a lightning rod for removal.
Yeah, this is, I mean, it's very similar to the Westgate region. It's the, do you have it? I know if you have it, you're going to play it right now. So that's what it does. All right, let's move on here to number 3. My number 3 is higher on someone else's list. My final higher rather. And that's fine because it's super duper dope. Ruben, what's number 3?
I don't like immediately jumping into multicolored uncommons unless I know that I have a type. You know what I mean? Like when Hour of Devastation was out, if I opened a River Hoopoe, I was going to take a River Hoopoe. Like that's
life.
what I'm going to do. That was my life. I'm all about that Hoopoe life. And in this format, I'm all about that Kalain Reclusive Painter life.
Oh yeah.
Kalain Reclusive Painter is a 1/2 for black-red, legendary creature, human elf bard. When Kalain Reclusive Painter enters the battlefield, create a treasure token. Other creatures you control enter the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on them for each mana from a treasure spent to cast them. Effectively, I mean, you can play it on turn 2 and then have 4 mana on turn 3 to play a 4/4 Hoarding Ogre, for example, which that's like one of the best starts that you can possibly have.
Oh, yeah.
The value that you can get from extra treasures is huge. It's just such a good card, and having 2 toughness is not irrelevant. A lot of the, decks are playing random piddly little 1/1s, or are, they need to spend a little bit extra attention on your 1/2.
Yeah, this card just this was one of those cards that I didn't really expect it to be as good as it kind of turned out to be, because after, my opponent played this, and then the Hoarding Ogre, and then the next thing they played came with 2 +1/+1 counters on it, and then the next thing they played later did, and it was like, what is happening? And this card just run away with the game. Whenever my opponent blocks with this, I can't fist pump harder. I remember I was attacking with like a 2/1 and they blocked it and killed, and I'm like, oh my god, thank you! I was scared to death of this card. This card brings me nothing but fear. That's what this card does. I don't like to play against it. All right. Nerd Girl, what's number 3?
Higher on somebody else's list.
Wow, we shared hires. How about it? Higher / well, not saying, but whatever. Yeah. Moving on here to number 2. All right, y'all don't want to include the mythics. I'm including the mythics. I'm just telling you. My first...
They're going to be in the draft. You might as well include them.
You're going to see them from time to time, right? I need you to know how ridiculously crazy over the top these things are. And it's not like I'm telling you something brand new when I'm telling you that Planeswalkers are good in limited decks. But when I am telling you that my first winning draft ever in this format, I had Lolth Spider Queen in my deck. And goodness gracious, this card is bananas. It's 2 black, 3 generic mana for a 4 loyalty mythic legendary Planeswalker Lolth. Whenever a creature you control dies, you put a loyalty counter on Lolth. For 0 colon, you draw a card and lose a life. -3, you create 2 2/1 black spider creature tokens with menace and reach, which is very important. And for -8, you get an emblem with, quote, whenever an opponent is dealt combat damage by 1 or more creatures you control, if that player lost less than 8 life this turn, they lose life equal to the difference. I have played against this emblem, and it is stupid, and I hated it, and I lost to it because it's dumb. And that card is crazy, and because those spider creatures have reach, their flyers can't get to it. The more they kill your creatures, the bigger Lolth gets. I remember being like upset because, I got to Meteor Swarm an opponent who had a Lolth, and it's great that I got rid of all the creatures. Their Lolth went to like 12 loyalty or something stupid. And then I lost because of the stupid emblem. So Amazing. It was really frustrating. But sure. It's a hell of a, and there's Planeswalkers in this set, but this is the Planeswalker you want to open, in my opinion.
The spiders also have menace, which actually killed me because they made 4 2-power creatures that all had menace. And I was like, oh, well, okay, I've got 2 creatures. I guess I'm never blocking this in any meaningful way. And then you block it one time, you take 6, they put a counter back on the Lolth, make 2 more. And then you're just like, well, poop.
Yeah, this is actually one of the mythics. I've actually been past a Lolth for some reason.
Whoa!
In pack 2, I picked a Lolth.
Wow.
In particular, this is good in that green-black, just mid-range
sacrifice.
Trade 1-for-1s and then wait for the biggest thing to survive strategy. Because this is effectively a 3-for-1, right? You're getting 2 bodies and you're getting a Planeswalker that they have to deal with. If they have a magic missile, they have a magic missile. Whatever. But if they don't, then you're getting insane value on an empty board or a board-locked board. You're just getting a Phyrexian Arena and drawing an extra card every turn and getting extra value off of your death triggers. Just an extremely good card. I would not be shocked to see this play in Constructed. This has all of the earmarks of Constructed, getting a board presence, getting card advantage, being a finisher, and only costing 5 mana. This card's great.
It's just silly, and I'm fine with an Eliwick. I'm cool with a Zavriel or whatever. Yeah. Don't love it, but I'm okay with it. I'm not okay with Lolth. I can't. I'm just gonna die. Ruben, what's number 2?
I have never beaten a Feywild Trickster in my life. I've just never beaten it. This card, maybe it's too high. Mm-hmm. I've never beaten a turn 3 Feywild Trickster. unless I've killed it on the spot. I just die to it every damn draft. I'm sick of this gnome warlock. All right? 2 colorless and a blue for a 2/2 uncommon gnome warlock. When you roll 1 or more dice, you create a 1/1 blue fairy dragon creature token with flying. And the token is adorable, by the way.
Yes.
And this art by Iris Compiet,
probably.
Is spectacular. We don't really see art like this very much. But man, this card just has my number.
It's a beating. Yeah.
I just lose to this card every single draft. Like, as soon as it's played on turn 3, I'm just like, well, guess I can't win ever again. It's just the worst.
Because they played the genie on turn 4 immediately. Sure. And this is the one thing where you're like, oh, they played that fairy on turn 2 that lets you roll twice. So then you're getting 2 triggers off this thing, which is also silly and ridiculous. And
you still only get 1 trigger.
Oh, you only get 1 trigger with that because you get to choose the highest.
It's whenever you do 1 or more. However, I did have a deck where I had this and the Dahlia, the red rare, the 3/2 that whenever you attack, you make a copy. Delina. So I had 2 pixies.
Oh no.
This 2/2 fairy generator and the Delina. Attack, you copy the fairy generator, and then each one of those triggers, because you have 2 pixies on the board, you're basically always going to hit the 15. Each one of those triggers does count, giving you another token each time. And because you're making more of the 2/2s, the first time you get 1 token, the second time you get 2 tokens, the next time you get 3 tokens. So I ended up with, for 1 attack on the Delina, I ended up with like 21 ones that turn. It was amazing.
Delina is incredible. That card, I don't know if we're going to talk about it, but let me tell you, I took somebody from 12 to 0 when I got 3 lucky rolls and made 3 copies of her out of nowhere. Sure. And it was amazing.
My favorite combo is the Pegasus with the Delina, because then you copy the Pegasus, and then the one that enters the battlefield gives Delina flying before blocks. Nice. So you can guarantee, even if you're not hitting lucky rolls, she's not going to get blocked and killed. So she's at least getting that nice evasion each round if you don't have like a tools or something for her. Right. So she's great with that.
Nice. Yeah. Nerd Girl, what's number 2?
My number 2 is the Gelatinous Cube.
Yep.
So it is a 4 mana 2 colorless black for a 4/3 body with Engulf. When it enters the battlefield, exile target non-ooze creature an opponent controls until Gelatinous Cube leaves the battlefield. You can dissolve for 1 black and X and put target creature card with value X. You can exile it, card with value X exiled with Gelatinous Cube into its owner's library. So
graveyard.
It's sort of like, you lock it down. If they remove it before you get a chance to dissolve it, then they get it back. But if you spend some mana and some time to dissolve it, you're good. My win rate against this card or with this card is so good because a 4/3 body for 4 is solid. It's a good, strong beater, but it's not uncommon in this set. However, it is even stronger if you remove the thing that can then block it. Right. If my opponent is on the play and they're playing this on 4, I'm basically never winning the game unless I can immediately answer it, because it's such a huge board swing. It's sort of like that Mind Flayer thing where you're getting that 2-for-1 value immediately,
right?
And you can just overcome the board with way more card value.
Yeah, this card is almost identical to Hostage Taker. I feel
very similar.
Where you, instead of getting the creature that you removed, you instead get 2 additional power for your 4 mana. But the additional mana that you pay into your ooze gets you additional value. So you're already have a removal spell attached to a creature. You're already 2-for-1ing, assuming they can't get rid of it immediately. And then later you can make sure that the 2-for-1 sticks. All of that for 4 power. I mean, this card is insane.
Yeah, this card, I mean, this is value. This is, the Ravenous Chupacabra version, whatever, kind of Hostage Taker, Ravenous. I always feel a little like, it's always a little, I don't know, what's the word, stressful? I don't know. It's always worrying to me when I haven't dissolved with the creature yet. And I'm like, I'm still attacking and blocking with it. And I'm like, man, they have a good trick here. I'm just going to get not only, 1-for-1, I get 2-for-1 maybe.
Yeah, get my lunch eaten.
You gotta be careful not to get absorbed, as it were. but the card is dope. All right, let's move on here.
It's always important when you're a new DM with a new party with new players. You got to spring a gelatinous cube on your players. For people that haven't experienced it yet, it's like the thing you spring on your first time dungeon delving players. It's so much fun.
Nice. Turn the corner here to our number one. Goodness gracious. This is my number one. My number one is a gigantic, ridiculous blowout. I know it's a rare. It's not even a mythic. They didn't even put what I feel is the best card. Like, I would take, like, if this was the foil in the pack or whatever, I would take this over Lolth. The amount of win rate I have with this card is 100%. The amount of loss rate when my opponent plays it is 100%. Have you ever in your life survived your opponent playing Orcus, Prince of Undeath? It's just a freaking blowout. I've never seen anything like it. I've never played anything like it where I'm like, mother of God, that does what? For a red, a black, and 2 generic mana plus X. So it's already in the best archetype, first of all. It's 4 mana and X, so it better be doing something stupid at rare. And it sure is. It's a 5/3 rare legendary demon with flying and trample, so it's got flample. And when it enters the battlefield, you choose one. And they're both great. Each other creature gets -X/-X until end of turn, and you lose X life. Oh no, I lose X life. Oh no, don't make me lose 4 life and kill your board. Or you return up to X target creature cards with total mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. They gain haste until end of turn. Holy mother of God. I've resolved this thing for like 4. I've resolved it for 6. My opponent resolved it for like 3. And just like, it's just devastation. There's nothing left. You're just dead.
Card's absurd.
Card's nuts.
I was considering making this my new commander. Just because it's such good value all by itself. Make like a red-black aristocrats kind of mix up. Yeah, I mean, you have a mode that says enter the battlefield. Are you winning or are you losing? Right? Or just play a 5/3 flying trample for 4, which is kind of impossible for a lot of archetypes to beat. Yeah, this card's crazy.
This was my number 3.
Nice.
My win rate with and against it is not quite as devastating as yours, but that's going to be, some variance. I've definitely beat more of these than I've beat gelatinous cubes. Surprisingly enough. But yes, amazing. It definitely made my top 3. This card is absolutely bonkers. And at rare only, I can't believe that.
Sometimes they make the rares the best ones, and most time, like, you hope the mythics, but like sometimes you have the dream trawlers and you can't get away from them. And this is just that card that, like, I don't know how to stop this thing from being absolutely absurd. You can't really play around it. Like,
I will say, I like that this set is, you can beat the best cards. The best
There's no
cards,
dream trawlers.
There's no dream trawlers, exactly.
True.
It
does have 3 toughness.
Right, exactly. So you can get rid of this with your Dragon's Fire, and you can deal with it with Grim Bounty. Even if you're getting great value, it's still a beatable card, which is a sign of a good format.
Which is good.
One of the times I played this, I did kill myself with it on accident, because there is the added text that when you do the -X side of this, you lose that much life.
Right.
And I was way behind, and I was like, okay, this is my out. I need this. And I'm like, how can I pull myself out of this? Okay, I'm going to take this, go to whatever. And then I can now wipe their board if I hit the land. And I was so focused on how I was getting out of this that that little bonus part of the text there, I forgot. So I just windmill slam this. I see their board explode, and then my character explodes. And I was like, oh no. Poop.
Yeah.
Oh no. Well, there you go. Ruben, what's your number 1?
My number 1 is a card. Listen, I don't, this is another uncommon I've never beaten. And I maybe I'm just bad at Magic. But I feel, and also I've never lost with it, because as soon as I get a Reaper's Talisman in my deck, I'm drafting around it. Like, this card is unbelievable. And until I started playing with it, I didn't realize how ridiculous it was. 1 black mana, artifact equipment. Whenever equipped creature attacks, it gains Death Touch until end of turn. Whenever equipped creature attacks alone, defending player loses 2 life and you gain 2 life, and it equips for the low cost of 2 mana. You kidding me? This thing is insane. It turns everything on your board into the best creature on the board. It's unbelievable.
It turns great. It turns decent, threats into fantastic threats. It's tough. Like if you're behind, this card gets a lot worse. But if you're able to just kind of push through some of that damage, they can't really block it hardly ever. Once you got thieves' tools in there.
If you're behind, you're still gaining 2 life.
Yeah, still draining 2 life.
It's not the end of the world to put this on a goblin token.
To give a 4 life swing, in those directions, plus the death touch is pretty good living. All right. MTG Nerd Girl, what is your number 1?
So my number 1, similar to your giant flying scary orc, this is a card I have never lost when playing and never beat when played against me, and that is Ranger's Class.
My number 3.
Yeah.
It is so your 1 and my 3 just kind of flip-flopped. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There. So
what's it do?
Ranger's Class is an enchantment class card that is 1 colorless and a green. So when it comes into the battlefield, no other requirements needed. It just enters the battlefield with a 2/2 green wolf creature token. So you're just getting a bear, which is basic vanilla stats, 2/2 for 2. I'm happy with this to fill, as filler in my deck. Mm-hmm. And then for the very low mana cost of just 2 more, you can, every time you attack, put a +1/+1 counter on one of your attacking creatures. So you're getting more and more board state for only 2 mana. You can just basically run away with the game. Mm-hmm. Very often you're playing this on 2 and it is your best turn 3 play. Even if you have a solid 3-drop, you're just doing this to make your wolf into a 3/3. On the play, this is going to be basically unstoppable. And then if they do manage to get rid of your wolf, all of your future creatures will then become threats that are difficult to deal with, making your cheaper, lower top decked creatures far more valuable and scary. And then the last level 3, for 4 mana, 3 colorless and a green. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast creature spells from the top of your library. So that's just card advantage. Massive, massive card advantage.
This card is bananas. I mean, they wanted this to be the best class, and it's not even close. We get it, Wizards. We wanted the green one to be the good one. You didn't have to lower all the costs to, absurd levels. And, I mean, I feel like we lived in a world at one point where that was, 2, 3, and 4 in terms of, how it leveled up. But at some point, they're like, let's just make it 2.
Right.
Let's make a good green card, shall we? And they made a good green card.
I mean, we needed more good green cards. Mm-hmm. But... this was my number 1 in our constructed list. So in limited, I mean, it definitely reads amazing for limited, right? You get a 2/2 for 2, and then even if they kill the 2/2, you still have value on the board still. Anything that makes 2 permanents, from Thraben Inspector to, and anything that makes 2 permanents, you're going to be happy with. Then everything attacks for 3. It immediately lets you attack for 3 if you have nothing else to do, which with all the 2/3s in the format, that's a huge deal. Oh, yeah. And then late in the game, when you have nothing better to do with your mana, you can dig through the rest of your library. This card is spectacularly good, and I mentioned that it's funny because the Ranger class in Dungeons and Dragons gets a bad rap for being the worst of the classes in D&D. It's ironic, or maybe it's serendipitous that it's the best in Magic.
That sounds like a conversation they would have, right? They would say, what's the worst class in D&D? And they go, the Rangers suck. You're like, that's the best one. Let's make that one awesome. And that's what they did.
If there is one card in the format, if I see played on turn, and I think to myself, so anytime someone plays a good card, I'm just like, okay, how am I beating this? Mm-hmm. That is my go-to thought. When I see this on 2, my go-to thought is, well, I'm dead. And that's just what this card is.
That's just how it is. And that was our top 10 D&D limited cards. You'll see them on the screen right now for your review. Take a look at my list, Nerd Girl's list, and Ruben's top 10. And we want to hear from you about what card we did not talk about. And then we'll select our favorite and win a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Nerd Girl.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Ruben.
Thanks. See you next time.
And we go to our final slide. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsors, CardHoarder.com, AlterSleeves.com, and Cubamajigs, my co-host, MTG Nerd Girl, and Ruben Bressler. You guys for watching or listening. I hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmics. Follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv at magicmics, on Twitter at magicmicescast, our Magic Mike subreddit, and like the Magic Mics page on Facebook. Or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.